That's it. Coming in, guys. Coming in, ladies and gentlemen. Coming a bit closer.
Can you see something? There you go. Squeezing. Oh, sorry. There you go.
Okay then, ladies and gentlemen. Now we're now standing in the outer ward of the Tower of London. We're actually in between two defensive walls. The inner wall behind you here is almost 50 feet high, and the outer wall, the one that's behind you there, is almost 40 feet thick. Now, in between the two, if you look down this way, we've got Mint Street, so called because up until the year 1810, this is where all the coins of the realm and the empire were all designed and minted. Now, if you look at this row of buildings behind you, ladies and gentlemen, like I say, they were all once part of the Mint. Most of these buildings now, though, have all been converted into homes to my fellow Yeoman Warder colleagues and beefeaters who live here at the Tower with our families. Having said that, though, that one directly behind you there, that's 2 stories high, that's number 2 Mint Street. Now, number 2 Mint Street used to be the home of the Master of the Royal Mint. In the year 1696, a very famous gentleman lived in that house there as Master of the Mint, that famous Englishman, Sir Isaac Newton, the man who invented that fantastic British invention of gravity. You're all floating around before that, I don't know if you know. Now, over in the corner here, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a small archway. That's known as the Sallyport or the Royal Entrance. Now, back in the day when London had little more than rough and uneven tracks, royalty preferred to travel by river. They would moor their royal barge up just the other side of that wall, cross over a small drawbridge, and they would make their entrance into the tower via that archway. Now, on the 29th of May, 1533, King Henry VIII was standing here, and he was awaiting the arrival of his second wife, Anne Boleyn, who was being brought to the tower to prepare for her coronation. As Anne stepped into the archway over there, Henry, like the good husband that he was, stepped forward, embraced his new wife, kissed her on both cheeks, and promised to love her for the rest of her life. Sadly for Queen Anne, that was only to be another 3 more years. Now, 3 years later, Queen Anne was brought back to the tower via a different gateway and for very different reasons. I'll cover more of that story later on. Now, behind me here, ladies and gentlemen, we have the Bell Tower, built during the reign of King Richard I or Richard the Lionheart. Called the Bell Tower because of a small belfry that sits on top. And inside that belfry is the oldest curfew bell in the City of London. It dates from the year 1651. It was rung as a warning. When it was rung, the gates would be closed and the battlements and the defences would all be manned. But it was also rung 1 hour before every execution. Now, the Bell Tower is the oldest and strongest of 13 towers which make up the inner defensive wall, and it comprises of 2 chambers, one on top of the other. Now, because of the nature of its construction, it's always been used to house really important prisoners. One such prisoner was a man by the name of James Scott, the Duke of Monmouth. Now, he was the eldest of 13 illegitimate children fathered by King Charles II. Born whilst his father was in exile in Holland, trying to escape the clutches of Oliver Cromwell after the English Civil War. Now, when Charles II died, he died without leaving an heir to the throne, and the throne was passed to his younger brother, James, Duke of York. Now, Monmouth insisted that his mother had married King Charles whilst they were in exile in Holland. If this were true, this meant that Monmouth was the legitimate heir to the throne. So in the year 1685, when James, Duke of York, was crowned King James II, Monmouth landed off the southern coast of England, and he raised an army of farmhands and labourers in what became known as the Pitchfork Rebellion. Sadly for Monmouth, it ended in the defeat of his army at the Battle of Sedgemoor in Somerset, where his army was totally destroyed and routed. Monmouth, he was found hiding in a ditch a few days after the battle and brought straight here to the tower. And in the space of 3 days, he was put on trial for high treason and sentenced to death. Now, on the day of his execution, which took place out on Tower Hill, his executioner was a giant of a man by the name of Jack Ketch. Jack Ketch was a full-time butcher, a part-time executioner, and most people believe a professional drunk. On the day of the execution, he was so drunk he had to take 5 strokes of the axe to try to sever Monmouth's head. Now, the first, it missed his neck completely and embedded itself deep into Monmouth's shoulder. By the time he had taken the 5th blow, Monmouth's head was still attached to his body. In a fit of rage, Jack Ketch threw down his axe, he pulled out his butcher's knife and proceeded to cut off the remaining pieces of flesh and sinew which connected Monmouth's head to his body, before placing his head on a pike and taking it down to the Old London Bridge. Now, meanwhile, back at the tower, somebody suddenly realised, hang on a minute, it's the son of a king that we just executed. And up until that point, there was a belief he had never had his portrait painted. So one of the beefeaters was dispatched from the tower, sent down to London Bridge with orders to collect the head and told to bring it straight back here. It was then sewn back onto the body by the tower surgeon. But sadly, ladies and gentlemen, it was too late to save him. I am told that portrait's got a bit of a detached look about it, okay? Right. I've not seen it myself, but it now hangs in the National Portrait Gallery in Trafalgar Square, so go and take a look for yourselves. Now, talking of beheading, let us now be heading off. Around the corner, the Traitors Gate, the Bloody Tower, or where the jokes are going to get really bad. Let's go.